We chose the name Iowa Off-Kilter so that we could cover a wide variety of subjects. This episode's a little wilder than our first two. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Welcome back to the campfire. I'm Kelly Michael Bevins.
And I'm Gavin Aronson. And we know it's been a while, but we think you'll be pleased with what we've got in store for you here this time. Our exploration of Iowa's kink and BDSM culture, its evolving legal landscape, and the gradual road to more mainstream societal acceptance over the years.
And we've explored this deeply enough that this episode will be the first of a two-part series on the subject.
As one tied us up, he might say.
A little wordplay for you. Our second episode will be centered on one of the events that we went to, and will be a little bit more like future Patreon content that we publish.
Keep a lookout there for some upcoming bonus content from our trip to the Van Meter Visitor Festival. And speaking of that, our results from the Van Meter Visitor Poll are in. 84 people have voted so far. Coming in first was a prankster burglar or a hoax with 20% of the votes. In second was the turkey vulture theory with 18%. And in third was Bob Feller. One person said they thought the Van Meter visitor is Kim Reynolds.
I could see that. With her beak.
Facebook, we had quite a few responses to. Keith Richards, Pazuzu, King of the Demons of the Wind.
It's a good guess.
Makes sense, yeah. And then one other person said he thought it was his ex.
We get any hate mail about the Van Meter vulture?
Still none, but if you've got something to say, our contact information is available on iowaoffkilter.com. We'll fight you. There you can also find links to all of our episodes with some additional multimedia content that we've recently added.
And we're also looking for musicians to help us expand the catalog of Iowa music that we feature. If you're interested in producing some music for the show, shoot us an email at iowaoffkilter@gmail.com. This episode features music from returning guest Dirksimus, but we've got a new special guest here as well.
That's Ames rock legend Brian Dudley, featuring music from his pandemic album COVID, as well as some exclusive kinky tunes.
But enough jibber jabber, Gavin. Let's get to the kink.
I don't think you had any problem finding somebody to talk to you around here.
I will go until I either pass out or you call the scene.
Do you guys mind if I rinse myself off?
We didn't draw blood yet.
Yeah, we did not draw blood.
It's a walk in the Black Forest.
A lot of dinners at IHOP.
So here we are, heading out to do some pony play out at the Elms.
We're not sure what story we're telling yet, and we're trying to approach it respectfully. We hope that people are going to be interested in sharing their stories and try to, maybe help us demystify this subculture in Iowa.
I think that they will. I think that people will be very I don't know, it's not something you talk about Monday morning over at the water cooler. You know, they don't often get a chance to speak about their experiences.
You just have to know the right water cooler to go to.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And this is a weekend event.
Yeah, it started last night and it ends tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a private acreage in
Coon Rapids.
Coon Rapids, right? Do you wave at that guy? He's got a Jeep too?
Yeah, it's a Jeep wave.
Like a Jeep thing.
I can't wait to meet Elmer, though, that's for sure. I also want to know what Elmer's cooked up. It sounds like he's known far and wide for his home cooking. Oh, wait, I should have turned right. I missed my turn.
Oh, shit, yeah. Damn, I forgot about that because it's recording. All right.
Oh, we're in Coon Rapids. Yeah.
Here we go. Welcome to Coon Rapids sign we just passed, but there's nothing there but 6 churches. Okay, that's right there.
That was it? Is that the Elms? Oh, shit,
yeah,
it is.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, shit. Wow, this is
right off,
road.
This is right off the road, yeah. It's directly off. It's just surrounded by, like, fields. Corn or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what.
And some campers. Oh, that answers our question. People are camping out. Tents. Shit, here we go, buddy. We get out of the Jeep, and the first thing we notice is a cart being pulled by 2 men in BDSM gear, or what they call fault pony gear. There's a sizable pond in the middle of the property, and the place has music festival vibes.
We walk down a little bit further, and we see a woman dressed in kind of a similar outfit. Her breasts are exposed, and she has a tail made to look like a pony, and she's posing for a photo. Her butt's covered in black and blue bruises.
We're approached by a woman named Mia. She's early 40s and not quite topless. I think she's just wearing nipple tape. We kind of explain who we are, and she points us in the direction of Elmer, who's cooking in a cabin.
One of several ways we'll later hear Elmer described is as sort of a kinky Santa.
He's an older guy, beard, shirtless, beer belly, but he's still kind of in shape.
I'm Dwight Elmer, and I've been Elmer since before grade school. In fact, it used to be called Elmer J. Fudge. I'm a little farm boy. Actually, I'm a lot of things, but we'll say farm boy.
The Elms is so tailored to being a kink venue. I think Gavin and I both really want to know how this came to be.
Yeah, it used to be hog house right there where that cabin was. Barn where my machine shed is. A house up on the hill. I tore it down, cleaned it up, buried it, and then started over. The road over there, that's Carroll County. The tree line is Guthrie County.
Oh.
This is Greene County. So we're out of the way. I don't know how Google found me, but Google found me. You can actually see pictures of the place on Google now.
Elmer's the type that treats you like family when he meets you. Before long, he's showing us photos of fish that he caught in his pond.
That's a largemouth. Yeah, there's 10 or 12 in there, like about like that.
Out of that?
You fill up.
Holy shit. Jesus.
I'm calling bullshit.
6, 7 pounds?
That pond's 100 years old. That pond's older than I am.
How big is he?
Oh, just short of 5 pounds.
He's got a pretty wicked sense of humor, too.
I tell people if they get out of line or whatever that, well, we're going to feed them to the turtles and the body won't be found. There's no worries. You know? That's for those that do consent violations.
Did you kill your hog? Did you eat your hog yet?
Yeah.
You did.
You were eating him.
I was. Damn, I really was like, see you, bro.
That voice is Riot. Riot was the first person to really approach us, and he was the first person we talked kink culture with.
I'm a submissive, I'm a brat, I'm a pet, I'm a pup, and I'm an alpha pup. This is a kinky campground where we have equipment outside, you know, and we're having ponies carry carts around the property.
Anyone want to drive horses?
I'm agender. I have just none. Like it's like every day I feel like there's nothing there that's male, female, or whatever. I specifically refer to myself as a cunt boy. I hope that's not too explicit to say.
No, nothing's too explicit.
Okay.
So how long have you been involved in the community?
Yeah, I've been pretty involved since as soon as I could be. Basically, turned 18 and I was like, that life, here I come. I'm 21 now for frame of reference. I absolutely love to talk about it, so this is right up my alley. In the normal world, I'm a little more open when I'm not working and stuff, but even some of my coworkers know, because it's just part of my lifestyle so much. If someone's gonna come over to my house, I'm like, I gotta explain the dog cage in my bedroom, and I only have a Pomeranian. The most extreme thing I've done is waterboarding, and I brag about this all the time because that's such an intense thing, and everyone's like, that's literally like a form of torture. I had a towel over my head, and he had a pitcher of water, and he would pour it out, and he would start on my chest and go up, and then slowly, like, you know, it would start feeling like I was drowning. And I'm deathly afraid of, like, water.
Can you describe, like,
my gear? I've got on my tail. It's like a husky shape, even though my dog breed is Akita. I've got on shorts and a red bra. Usually I don't have on that much when I'm here. I've got on a head harness from Tavron's Leather on Etsy. It's kind of got that pony play look. There's one that has a muzzle, but I didn't want that one because I wanted to suck dick in this.
I was going to steal her whips.
I will come over and do some whips.
Not particularly. What are you talking about?
Well, because
Talking about kink stuff. I told you I was excited.
what kink stuff?
That voice is Naomi, Riot's friend. At this point, I'm so glad that there are a couple of people who have actually approached us willing to talk because we didn't know if anyone was going to talk to us. And right off the bat, we had Riot and Naomi.
So my first event was a clothing optional campground. You could stay the weekend if you want, but I just went out for the day. And I met two very good friends that I have now.
The first party I went to, oh my God, it was amazing. I met my master. He wasn't my master until literally like 2 years later. And we had so much fun. I was such a brat, and I got beat so hard that we got asked to do a scene together for like an organized event. So I was one of like the acts, so to speak, or one of the planned scenes. So everybody just sat down and watched. So like scenes here would be more public because, you know, you don't have to be an exhibitionist for someone to like watch your scene and you be okay with it. It can be as private or as open as you want it to be. And I mean, like, if you go to a play party, which tonight is kind of going to be a little more play party-ish. I know I'm doing a scene.
I'm doing at least 2 or 3.
But, yeah, I lost my train of thought.
BDSM is based off of bondage, discipline, dominant, submissive, sadist, masochist. But every single person is a gradient of all of BDSM. A lot of people think that kink BDSM is inherently sexual.
I think there's a lot of people who keep themselves like in the kink closet. They don't want to be perceived as just this sex devil.
BDSM is about so much more than sex.
Kink people are like super loving, super caring, and like super like family-ish, like familial to each other, in like our own kinky way, of course.
I had a dream, it's the same old scene, you and me on a stage in the summertime.
Oh, the vanilla kinksters. They don't know words when you're talking about stuff. They're like, what's the dynamic?
Dancing in old shoes, showing your teeth.
Yeah, that's gonna be us.
But you're singing to me.
See, but you're not saying that you're kinky. You're coming here fully honest, like, I don't really know what I'm doing.
And I'm not even like discounting that I could be kinky.
We're talking
absolutely
about you guys.
I like them. Leave them alone.
They are nice.
I've always got an alibi. I'm stuck in my old shoes with dirt on my feet.
We're not talking that shit.
Same spot, but I'm
We thought you were a couple.
maybe I love you, maybe I don't. Maybe I love you, maybe I don't. Maybe I love you, maybe I don't.
The woman who thinks we're a couple is Mia, whom we met earlier. She offers to give us a tour of the dungeon, and we take her up on it.
The dungeon is a Morton building. It's like a big tool shed that doubles as a dungeon. In the middle, you've got operating tables, St. John's crosses, shelving full of disinfectants and cleaners. But outside of that, there are tool benches and stand-up saws and tractor tires. And then lining the walls, you've got a combination of the two with signs.
Ladies, no bras beyond this point. We're proud of the red, white, and blue. Biker Babe Avenue. That one might have actually been like designed like a street sign.
With rakes and shovels hanging on hangers, but also kink gear and kink outfits in dry cleaning bags. As we walk in the door, we see a woman, and she's setting up a pure romance table. And the lug of toys that she's dragging in is leaving a trail in the sawdust.
As we walk out of the dungeon, we strike up a conversation with Mia.
And I said to him, when I come out of this room, you better be fucking naked. And I said it just like that. And when I came out of changing, and I was like, don't fucking look at me.
So you already knew what he was looking for.
I knew what he was looking for because that's what I look for.
Yeah.
I'm not naturally dominant, but I was able to step into that role, and I beat the shit out of that guy, and he was calling for enough.
It was an enjoyable experience?
There was a part of me that really enjoyed that, but I'm mostly submissive. Everyone's different, especially out here where things are more like free. It's like you can just kind of like be who you want to be.
Do you think it's like less judgmental in the culture?
Kind of funny. Like, it's overall, like, if you talk about like what judgment is in society, I feel like it's less judgmental, but within the society, like, there's always people that judge people, no matter what group you're in. There are people that judge the way other people like dominate people. There are people that judge the way other people seen. Like, there's someone that questioned me why I have bruises down here, because they're like, well, you're only supposed to beat an ass. You're not supposed to beat like a thigh, you know?
To expand on what Mia's saying here, there's a lot of gray area when it comes to kink. It's not always so uncomplicated. Our state, believe it or not, has played a significant role in how issues of BDSM and consent have been interpreted legally, thanks to a court case from 1985. The case details either a consensual sadomasochistic fantasy come to life, or a brutal and terrifying sexual assault. These details may be difficult for some listeners to hear. The case involved the defendant named Edward Tree Collier, who ran what he referred to as an outcall model business, an escort service. Collier was appealing his conviction on charges of possession of a firearm by a felon, and more to our point, assault resulting in serious injury. At issue was an incident from the summer of 1982 when a model Collier employed returned without any money after an extended encounter with a client she apparently spent her birthday doing drugs with. According to the model's testimony, this made Collier angry, to say the least. He locked her in a room and threatened her, saying he was going to make sure she had a birthday she would remember and that she would probably never want to tell anyone about. What happened next, according to the model, was Collier's sadistic and very much unwanted punishment. He forced her to strip naked, blindfolded her, tied her to a bed, and whipped her on the thighs, legs, and chest with his belt. She tearfully pleaded with him to stop, but instead, he slapped her in the face and gagged her, used objects to perform sexual acts on her, beat her more, and then he anally raped her. When Collier went to the bathroom, the model found a gun and shot at him. He had another gun, which he pointed at her, threatening to kill her. The model survived the assault with a swollen lip, welts across her body, and severely bruised thighs. But according to Collier, he didn't even have a gun on him. And the rest of the story, well, he said it was all part of a consensual BDSM encounter performed at the model's request as a way to celebrate her birthday. The model, he claimed, owned more than 300 books about bondage and sadomasochism, and she stepped him through the process of how she wanted to be beaten in order for him to fulfill her sexual fantasy. Here's where it starts to get interesting in terms of questions of Iowa law and legal precedent. Collier's defense cited a section of Iowa law that defines criminal assault and also carves out exceptions for when people voluntarily participate in certain activities, like sports or other social events. These activities cannot be inherently criminal. The physical contact has to be a, quote, reasonably foreseeable incident, unquote, and it must not, quote, create an unreasonable risk of serious injury or breach of the peace, unquote. There's also a specific exemption for firearms and other dangerous weapons. So you can probably see how the legal exceptions to assault could apply to a contact sport like football, or say an outing with friends to the paintball park. Collier was not as successful with the exemption that he argued should apply to his alleged actions, and we'll explore this in more detail later in the episode.
Where are you going?
Son.
I'm sorry, guys. I gotta go hang out with
That's all right. Thank you for talking with us.
After that, we kind of just wander around. We stop by a station where balloons are hung from a kinky metal structure, and people on all sides are practicing their whipping skills.
You guys are still here, huh?
Yeah.
Haven't left yet?
You haven't scared us away yet. You're going to have to do a little better than this.
That's great. Hang around long enough, that's all I got to say.
Yeah. Oh, he did pop it. Okay.
Oh.
I was going to ask, is the objective to pop it then?
Yeah.
We end up sitting on a blanket in the middle of a field between the dungeon and Elmer's cabin. There we meet Tony and Old Warrior, the fault ponies that were hauling the cart behind them.
The bird cage you can wash through. Yeah. You can wash through. It gets funky. The limit for me on wearing a bird cage is the chafing on the bottom of the scrotum. I could wear it indefinitely as far as the cock goes. I could wear it indefinitely.
Stainless steel.
If I'm wearing it for 3 days, I'm so...
Are they doing anything in the dungeon?
I'm so worked up. At that point, I take it whatever I want, however I want.
Oh, I never was in the superior position. I was always the inferior. You know, I was a household domestic slave.
So what was your name?
I'm Old Warrior.
Old Warrior?
Yeah. So you guys are doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Old Warrior gives us some insight into pony play and kink life in general.
Being a horse is exhibitionism. I call it horseplay because I don't like the word pony, but pony play horse. It's almost like a service.
I can see that.
And it's a gift to the people here. All my life, masturbating fantasies always evolved around BDSM. I have always been an alpha male. If I walk into a room, I'm going to figure out whose ass I could kick or who could probably kick my ass. I spent my lifetime in and out of the military, ended up a Marine officer. I can be very viciously mean. I can be very aggressive. With me, it was always desire erotica for mainly predicament bondage, which is a whole nother issue.
What's that?
Predicament bondage is where you go beyond the being tied up. It's being put in a situation probably where you're out of control, and whatever's going to happen to you is going to happen to you. What if, and I'd use the term my owner, what if my owner actually found a stable and literally put me in there where I could not get out as a horse? And I don't see I'm not a furry. I in no way see myself as a horse, in no way, shape, or whatsoever. For me, the erotica is my woman keeping me, and the fantasy would be the predicament bondage is if somehow she tricked or put me in a stable where I couldn't get out, where I am a man, but I'm being forced to accept the servitude as if I was no more than her kept animal.
Yeah.
So that's the erotica for me, and that's the predicament bondage. I know I'm not a horse, but to be forced to live that way and just to service her that way as if I was nothing more than a horse in a stable. That was always ingrained in my sexual processing, almost like instinctually. And I will say honestly, at least in my linear progression of my life, I don't think I could have done this in my 20s or 30s without it being harmful to the id, to my psyche. I could scene or do just about anything with a male, and that doesn't bother me because I'm not homosexual, and it's not going to make me question that I am.
Yeah. Whereas, if you're 20, 30 years old, you have that.
Well, if you're 20, 30 years old and I climb on top of you and start dry humping you, and if you act like and you enjoy it, well, what am I, gay? No. But I can get up and rub up against Tony, against Fault Pony. I mean, we can rub up and hold and do that, and that doesn't make me insecure. That doesn't make me question my masculinity, my manhood. Once you get into your 50s, and so many of us have a lot of money, have so much money that there's no consequences. There's no consequences to any of this. If you have enough money, you can do what the fuck you want in life, and you know who you are. You don't have a family. Particularly once you get divorced, there's no risk there. No one's going to walk away on you, and you got your kids. And
is your son pretty accepting of that then?
Yeah, he don't care. Most people in this lifestyle do explain to their kids. The most common heads up I hear people give is I'm very sex positive.
Well, thanks for talking to us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you think of anything else,
Nah,
it's down.
Kind of bored you guys enough, but anyway, good luck, gents. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
By now we're hungry, and it's time to find out whether Elmer lives up to his reputation as a chef. And he does. We grabbed some brisket, pulled pork, we made little sliders out of them, barbecue sauce, rolls with butter, fresh fruit, potato salad, fudge
We
brown.
pull up chairs around the campfire. Before we know it, people are sitting around the fire next to us.
Naomi, Riot, and Elmer join us, along with some people from Kansas City.
So how did the elms come about?
How did this come about? All right. I started having people out, friends and stuff, and then we went to other Vortex parties and Cypex parties, and they wanted a place to do outdoor activities, so I said, well, come on out. And
Yeah.
somebody has to take the initiative to do something. So, if there's 8 people, fine. If not, we'll have 80 people.
And you've just kind of built up a following over the years?
Well, I try not to, but I do.
Can you tell us about the shirt? I've seen several people wearing that here today.
Okay, down in Kansas City, they got a Kansas City Pony Group, and that's who the event is today, and I'm just the host for it. Handful's the one there. He kind of in charge of the group or whatever.
We'll get better acquainted with Handful next episode.
Are there kind of weekends that you're known for? Is this one of the weekends that you might be known
This
for?
is starting to be a weekend we're known for. This is the 3rd time we've done this one. The main thing, I do a barbecue every August for kind of a novelty when somebody cooks a whole steer.
So is that something you're doing again this August?
Probably not going to do a steer, not the price of meat and stuff now. We're going to do a barbecue. I don't know what we're cooking. We'll probably find a hog someplace and do a hog.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll just buy some pork butts and do a bunch of pork butts. I don't know what we're cooking.
So if we decide to do a follow-up episode, is that going to be the weekend to do it?
It's posted.
Yeah?
Can you guess what the second episode's about?
You have a shower you can use. Yeah, in the cabin. Or in the my camper.
I appreciate it. I worked up a pretty good sweat today. I'd like to rinse some of that off.
That's fine.
That's fine.
You got a towel or need a towel or you need anything? Or?
No, I carry all my stuff. I just need the plumbing, that's all.
Yeah, or I don't know if Mia's using hers. The fifth wheel does too, have one too.
Whichever one he tells me to, I'll shower.
Yeah, mine's closer.
As we're talking to Elmer, I look up and there's a bomb hanging from the front of the roof. What's the story behind that?
What, a little bomb?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because we have a bomb of a place.
So I guess the question then is, where'd you get the bomb?
World War II. That's a training bomb for B-52 bombers. They used to fill them with sand and you had to learn how to load that safely.
So you're ex-military then?
No, I just found it in the junk pile. I got it.
What are your other conversation pieces around here?
I'm a conversational piece by myself, so.
Well, I do need to find out how much to build the St. Andrew's Cross.
To build one? Depends on what you want. Anywhere from 150 to 800.
So you do carpentry, you do...
Well, I wouldn't say I do carpentry, but I'm kind of a wood butcher.
Okay, gotcha.
No, I make all kinds of toys. And
Do you do it just as a hobby?
I make them as a novelty to keep my mind busy and do stuff, and then I donate stuff and I give stuff away. And how we doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm trying to behave.
So you're talking about, how we're so close to the road.
Do people know about this place?
Yeah, I'm the talk of the town. They talk. I'm sure they do. It's a small town community. They know when you change color toilet paper around here,
Thanks for letting us come out here. I appreciate the hustle.
Yeah, we're glad you're receptive to it.
Feel better? Feel better?
So after that, it's dark and we were cold as shit. We head into the dungeon.
We don't bring our recorders with us inside, but what we see will remain vivid in our minds. If anything puts us out of our comfort zone, it's gotta be this scene.
We don't show up till the very end, but Danica, Handful's partner, is nude.
We recognize her as the woman who was posing for photos when we first arrive at the Elms. She has bloody whip marks all over her back and cotton balls stuck to it where Handful has cut skin tags out of her.
Seeing the effect that a whip has on a human body is a little jarring. You can see why the dom that's throwing the whip is often compared to an artist, and how the sub is their canvas. And there are other scenes that follow. Handful does another scene, this time with Naomi. There was also a spanking scene with Elmer and Riot. We also see the 4 Kansas City people who were sitting around the campfire, and they've split into pairs.
2 of them head to an operating table. One lies down while the other one gets out a vibrator. The other 2 are performing a scene on one of Elmer's St. John's crosses, also known as an X-Cross, a popular piece of dungeon furniture. This is probably the most explicitly sexual thing we've seen till this point.
We get the impression that Handful and Danica's scene had been intense, but maybe not overtly sexual. We wrap up the night in the relaxation station.
The relaxation station is a tent.
Everything's tie-dye and psychedelic.
Lining the walls inside are a series of tapestries.
The vibes are mellow.
There's a disco ball and chill music playing.
Inflatable couches even.
People who performed scenes earlier are in here decompressing.
Handfuls going into detail about the 6-day training regimen he has Danica on. A big focus in pony play is building your physique and your stamina. The people who brought the relaxation station are there too. A former preacher and his wife, who had left the Pentecostal First Assembly of God to follow a more free-spirited faith. Burning Man.
It's very comfortable inside.
The space heater was keeping us warm.
And we all sat in there and chilled out.
My dogs were barking.
Relaxed. Closed our eyes and drifted off.
After that, we got in the Jeep and we almost died on the drive home, and we went straight to the studio.
The Van Meter visitor almost swooped down.
You wore your Van Meter visitor shirt. Yeah, I forgot that. Oh, you know another thing we forgot? Tag and the Thanksgiving anal guy story.
For the longest time, these 2 had never met each other, and I needed a way to refer to him when I was talking to him, so we just started referring to him as Thanksgiving Anal Guy between the 2 of us.
Hi, I'm Thanksgiving Anal Guy. The story behind that is one day I had anal raw.
You did anal wrong.
I did anal raw.
Wait, raw or wrong?
Wrong.
It was raw too, but it was wrong.
By the way, do you like musicals?
For those amongst the audience that are asking, how do you do anal wrong? You don't just and shove it in.
As fast as you fucking can, as hard as you fucking can.
I'm not paying attention to the specifics. I wasn't noticing the nuances of like...
He's had anal done to him.
Thank you, Naomi. She's promised me that the moment that I let her, stick a dildo in my ass, she's going
He's gonna get it back.
Seems fair on the offset. You're not the one that's gonna get it.
You stayed with your dick in me while I was crying.
If it gives your viewers any sort of pleasure, I have a butt plug in now, so I'm training.
Your face.
That's a good story.
Thank you.
You were so worried about farting with a butt plug in. It was adorable.
You looked into history, right?
Yeah. The history of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
DSM.
DSM, yeah. So that started in 1952. And people who had fetishes were grouped together broadly with other people considered deviant, like homosexuals, transvestites, but also people who, we consider actually problematically pedophiles, rapists.
Back in the day, way long ago, I'm turning 60 and I started this in my 20s.
That's Jay.
This was all kind of grouped together as sexual deviance that was actually an indication of a personality disorder that was on the kind of sociopath spectrum.
It used to be just the killer was into BDSM.
Jay runs what originally attracted us to this subject, vortex parties.
Next thing you knew, it was on CSI, and the madam or the mistress was somebody people were like, wow, she's cool, I like her.
Vortex parties might be described as an urban version of the Elms. It takes place in kind of a warehouse setting in downtown Des Moines, and there's typically a younger, trendier crowd.
Let's say 20 years ago, the communities were tighter because everybody was watching out for everybody. You didn't play with somebody new until you vetted them and knew who they were, and, you were always very cautious.
The second edition of the DSM was published 16 years later, so 1968, amid the sexual revolution in the United States. It expanded the definition of sexual deviations to include, quote, exhibitionism, voyeurism, sadism, and masochism.
It got better in 1968, or it got worse? They broadened it to include more.
Well, yeah, they broadened it, so it didn't really get better. I would say probably.
We were fearful, feeling like, we were just on the edge of what was legal. Even though there were no laws, when we had munches, we had to be careful where they were held.
You see this today where people are open about it and they're having these parties and it's on FetLife, but the old guard we've talked to has kind of brought up the point that it wasn't always that way.
When I used to host parties or we'd have people at the house, you'd literally have somebody watching outside because we'd have 5 or 6 cars out there and we were always watching over our shoulders. My first partner that I had in this was actually a police officer. And I said, do we need to worry about this? And he goes, you're fine. You're not doing anything wrong.
So there was this group called the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom. In the 80s and 90s, they trying to gain more acceptance for the BDSM, leather, and fetish community, and also swing and polyamory.
So we've seen activism kind of throughout.
That did eventually result in changes. 1973, the DSM removed homosexuality as a mental disorder. It wasn't until 2010 that the American Psychiatric Association finally drew a distinction between kink behaviors and actual pathologies.
2010, it just seems surprisingly late when we often attribute so much of the rise of kink culture to the internet. But it did sound like the internet became a catalyst for its growth pretty much right away, right? There was like Usenet, but it wasn't just Usenet to FetLife. There was a whole bunch of stuff in between it.
The internet started the munches.
The munch is the best way to ease into it. Usually you'll find on a site like FetLife, oh, there's this munch. So you go to, and you just kind of talk to people and get to know people.
I went to a munch. I met people. Everybody was super welcoming.
Back in the day, it was ICQ, if you can remember that. There was also Yahoo groups, were the two that pretty much started the Iowa BDSM.
It used to be you had to go to a munch within the past 6 months to be able to be at least eligible to go to the party.
Now there's coffees, there's evening meals, there's all kinds of different avenues. And so Saturday afternoon munch has become a thing of the past.
We're going to go out to dinner and get to know each other. And we don't go out to restaurants and start talking about how we pegged our girlfriend last night. But
now you've got FetLife, for instance, which is I guess you could make a comparison to Facebook for lack of a better one.
Facebook with more
with more what?
more
Finish that thought.
I learned about the community through the internet.
Facebook kink is a whole completely different world.
Our Discord group has 200 plus people.
I found out about it through Tumblr.
The FetLife group has over 2,000 people.
I was on Reddit
If somebody wants to get together, they just throw it up on Discord and say, hey, I'm going to do a bar meet. Anybody want to come?
Some weren't sure that the internet was a net positive for the kink community.
You see a lot more drama. You see a lot more relationships going south. Commitment doesn't mean the same thing it did back a while back.
They talked about YouTube.
Now you can go to YouTube and learn a lot of the stuff that we used to teach people in private.
And there were divided opinions on whether YouTube was a good thing or a bad thing.
There's certain things you cannot learn or know on YouTube.
And that is problematic when it comes to upholding standards of safety.
I can read a book on how to fly an airplane. I can read it backwards and forwards. But there's probably not a single person sitting in here that if I go out and buy a plane, get into it and say, guys, let's go, I read how to do this, that you're going to jump in a plane and go do it.
Somebody's putting a YouTube channel on there. They're promoting the community. So I don't see anything wrong with it. As a matter of fact, I would encourage people.
The stuff they're learning off of YouTube, they're not learning the pitfalls that go along with it.
When I was in my basement, when I was 18 and 19 years old and spanking somebody, I had no place to go other than remembering what my dad did to me. You know, it's like it wasn't. It's just most everybody learned on their own.
There was one thing that all of them agreed on. Do you think the culture itself is just growing?
Absolutely.
Definitely, 100%.
Kink has become mainstream.
You have a lifestyle now that is far more accessible.
Is kink culture growing? Is it
By
leaps and bounds now? Yeah.
Leaps and bounds.
Shoot, high school students know about kink and tying people up.
Like a lot of people who do OnlyFans do kink. I think with people who like getting exposure to OnlyFans, they're starting to get exposure to like, oh, these people do fetish shit. Like this person pisses in her girlfriend's mouth. Like
we joke and say it was because of 50 Shades of Grey.
It's like undeniably impactful. I mean, that is like, I can't think of any other example of pop culture that broke through into the mainstream as much as that.
If you look at a lot of the media, they have needed new things to stimulate people, and BDSM has been one of those things that's been in a lot of people's closets. The mainstream side starts saying, this is okay. Of course, 50 Shades of Grey becoming the popular book and a really bad popular movie didn't hurt us.
You could tell that the contrasting perspectives of the old guard and the new guard painted really different versions of kink.
Over the long term, it has changed drastically. When you thought of BDSM back in the day, you thought of motorcycles and leather. You know, today they come in polos and jeans.
No matter what you do, there's going to be a generation gap. They call it the old guard.
And you're going to see this in any subculture, right?
Back in the day, there was a lot more of the hard sadomasochism. It was all about how hard you can hit somebody.
people like look at people my age and they're like, they are just the people who are daddy kink or DDLG and like pet play. They're not real kinksters.
When you're younger, you kind of have to earn your rank.
Today, there's all kinds of role play. There's all kinds of different type of things that are happening.
Maybe some of it too is like they're kind of, it used to be like their thing. They're kind of secret.
Yeah.
And they almost seem to enjoy that aspect of it, or it was a little more taboo.
You miss it, that part of it?
Yeah, because there was a thrill in the fact that it was taboo.
Yeah. But also the people that were there really wanted to be there.
Some of the old guard we talked to didn't sound like very optimistic about the changing of the guard. Do you see the younger generation of Iowa picking up the mantle? And
I'm cynical.
I'm with him.
Which I think you just kind of see from general old guard in anything, right? The last scene we saw before we went to the relaxation station was Elmer spanking Riot.
Yeah, they were both every bit of the characters that you've heard on this podcast. You're gonna say it.
They were very, very true to form. And Elmer had a paddle, or several paddles, I guess. Yeah. And that was a spanking scene.
Yeah, and that was the joining of the guard.
It really showed that it doesn't matter whether you were old guard or new guard. You're all still a part of kink.
I go by Rocker Daddy. I've been in the lifestyle over 20 years.
Got into it when my husband and I opened our marriage.
I was on Reddit.
I got into it with an ex-girlfriend.
I stumbled across the BDSM community subreddit.
She brought me in, actually.
It was kind of a catharsis, a confession for sins both real and perceived.
And suddenly I'm like, whoa, these people care about the people that they're involved with.
It's just like that puzzle piece kind of fit into place. There was no going back.
If you're interested in getting involved in Iowa's kink scene, joining the Facebook of Kink, fetlife.com, will provide you with a lot of options. A good place to start would probably be the Central Iowa Power Exchange, or CIPEX. That's an educational group that helps introduce newcomers to the scene. We've already mentioned the Elms and Vortex, and they both have a presence on the site also. And there's a bunch of other Iowa groups on FetLife. Here's just a sampling. The Cedar Rapids Organization of Perverts, or CROP for short, Fet Riders, that's an Iowa motorcycle club, Iowa Hookup, Iowa BDSM Enthusiasts, Iowa Cuckold Hot Wife Bull, that one's one group, Iowa BBWs and those who admire and love them, Central Iowa Poly, Old Capitol Kink, that one's a reference to the former state capitol building in Iowa City, Iowa Kinksters, Iowa Threesome, Iowa Gangbangs, Iowa Kinky Swingers, Friction Iowa, the Dubuque Cheaters, Crossdressers of Iowa, Iowa Spanking Society, Iowa Glory Holes, Iowa Water Sports for anyone who's in the...
After our visit to the Elms, it was on to Vortex. This month's theme was Rainbow Glow Party, in celebration of June being Pride Month. Every year there are these debates on whether kink belongs at Pride. Do people dressed in BDSM gear prevent the marches from being family-friendly? And does that detract from the goal of furthering mainstream acceptance of the LGBTQ community?
There's a political element to all of this. The first Pride March was held in 1970 to commemorate the Stonewall Uprising in New York City the year before. A series of demonstrations protesting police brutality and harassment of gay nightclubs and similar establishments. Because of this history, actually, uniformed police have been prohibited from participating in Pride marches in several cities. Pride is rooted in the politics of resistance and the struggle for equality, and members of the kink community have been integral to this struggle. Members of the leather subculture, for instance, were deeply affected by the AIDS crisis of the 1980s, and also cared for LGBTQ individuals dying of AIDS when many politicians, religious leaders, and even healthcare workers shunned them as sinful deviants.
Today, things are significantly different. Pride has become corporatized, like it or not. Companies recognize that embracing the LGBTQ community is good for their image and their bottom line. Some argue that Pride has become sanitized and lost much of the political clout that it once had.
There's an article published in June 2021 on Vox.com by journalist Alex Abad Santos that I think sums up the issue pretty well. Quote, "Queer history is often about resistance to norms and embracing radical existence, so engaging in respectability politics. The idea that marginalized groups need to behave or act in a certain way to validate the compassion shown toward them flies in the face of those goals."
Well, kink's a buffet. It's a buffet.
Yeah.
And you take and you make your own kink. So, you know, if you want a little jalapenos, you don't want any green beans in your kink, then by God, you don't put any green beans in it. That's all there is to it.
Alright, we're recording. Well, here we are on the way to the Vortex Fetish Party.
What are you expecting?
The first thing that's going to be different is it's indoors. The last one is outdoors at the Elms.
If all goes according to plan, Gavin's going to have a little experience tonight. We'll see.
Yeah.
But he's showered for the event, so that's a good first step.
It's important, yeah.
Although the dubious stain on the front of his pants is...
Yeah. Right on my crotch, it's a giant butter stain from some McDonald's breakfast I had the other day.
That's an elaborate backstory.
That's not that
for
elaborate.
One stain.
I thought it's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. It's one I can stick to. It's consistent.
But we are leaving our recording devices in the car. The organizer has some concerns about privacy, which are probably warranted. We are going to hopefully go to sort of an after-party event at an Airbnb.
It's too early for you. Kelly just woke up, so he's struggling for work here.
7:43.
We'll warm him up. I'm supposed to be giving you directions right now.
Yeah, you are. We're close, actually. Yeah. This is
Thanks, Navigator.
I told you. Yeah, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Right here.
No, it's not.
Bullshit. This is it right here.
You got 2 more blocks.
I'm
a bad navigator. I'm a bad navigator. I didn't tell you to turn left. You're not supposed to turn left in school week.
It said right there.
You gotta turn right now. You gotta go with the actual.
If we hit Burger King, we were going too far. Hold on.
Oh, wait. No, you're right.
I told you.
But that wasn't even a street. That was like a parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. You go up 100 block.
That guy's got a suitcase. Okay, we'll drive by it.
Okay.
But, if he's got a suitcase, I'm imagining that's for the purposes. But this is the parking lot.
A friend from the Elms meets us outside the building, and we discuss what the night has in store for us, including some of the rules and the etiquette around scening.
I was kind of like worried that you guys were gonna like not come because you couldn't record anything inside. But I'm glad
we
you guys
mailed
showed
Jay
up.
and said that we wanted to show up even if they weren't comfortable with that.
I don't know really what else is like planned for the evening. Like I think it's just kind of people going on about their scenes. I figured Impact would be the easiest to do as an introductory, because it's something that you can easily get into and easily get out of. You don't have to be like restrained for it or anything. You know, like I can start with just letting you feel my hands on your body, on your back, on your butt, on your thighs, wherever I'm going to be, and just letting you get used to me. I think that's a pretty important thing, is like the warm up and the getting to know who you're playing with. So set of safe words that every group pretty much uses is going to be green, yellow, and red. Okay. Green is like, I'm good, let's go, keep going. Yellow would be like, I'm good, just check in. And these are kind of things you use as check-ins, but also like that the DM will listen out for, because really they're hearing out for red. They want to know that your scene is going well and everyone's still consenting to it. Red is like the revoking consent to play at that point. Okay. So like if I'm wailing on somebody's ass and they say red, I need to stop. And if I don't hear it because maybe I'm in my headspace or whatever, someone will step in and tell me like, hey, they said red, you need to stop. Typically it's like physically a little rough, but there are soft doms. I am not one of them, but if for the sake of a lab, I won't be like super mean. It won't be too mean.
Okay, cool. Well, let's get in there.
Yeah.
We open the door to the entrance of the building, and we find ourselves in a small room with black walls.
Vortex came about because we started hosting parties in the house. We started getting about 40 people, and we just had to find a venue.
Someone's there to greet us and gives us directions down the hallway and up a couple of flights of stairs to the part of the old warehouse-style building where the Vortex party is being held.
Vortex happened 7 years ago. About 5 years ago, we brought Omaha into it, too.
Upstairs, there's a banquet table with a tablecloth over it, and a couple of people standing behind it with consent forms. On a shelf behind the table, there's a container filled with pride flags. This is an LGBTQ-friendly party.
We've always been involved in the LGBTQ community. We're seeing a lot more transgender. We're seeing more non-binary people.
The mood is relaxed. We walk into the event, past some couches, and into a large cafeteria-style gathering area where a few dozen guests are mingling at tables.
A lot of what we're seeing, like we had probably 20 new people, and most of them are couples. Most of them are saying, I want to see what this is like, and I want to see if this can spice up our relationship.
People here seem open-minded and receptive to speaking with us. Granted, we're not recording them.
8 people that came to our party first went to the swinger club afterwards. We were literally the warm-up for them to get excited.
Past a counter against the left wall that's covered in games, toys,
cupcakes too,
and other things people have brought to the party, there is another hallway that leads into the dungeon or playroom.
Gavin is eager to check this out because there's a chance that he'll be doing a lab with Riot there later.
Some people come to Vortex just because it's a social outlet. They never went into the playroom. They just sat and played Cards Against Humanity or Exploding Kittens.
The playroom is more dimly lit and has a darker appearance due to the walls that are painted black on one side and green on several others.
We say we're sex friendly, but only if it's part of a scene.
There are scenes taking place here when we enter.
It's not, let's get on the floor and give a blowjob. That's not accepted.
Mostly they're impact play scenes, but also some rope play.
I don't want 40 single males thinking they're going to have sex coming to the party.
We also ask about a couple smaller rooms in the back. One, we're told, is for needle play.
and the other is the naughty room, where people can do pretty much whatever they like, keeping in mind that there's a window into this room for anyone who wants to watch them.
By the end of the night, about 100 people show up, but there are only about 30 people here at the moment.
We go through 1.5 to 2 year cycle before you change members almost completely.
We meet Jay, we say hello. He's a social butterfly, kind of the glue that holds it all together. He introduces us to a local rope guru. We ask if any of these experts are paid.
Absolutely not. People think that we're stage shows, and I'm like, no, this is mom and pop that live down the street spanking each other.
It's pretty loud in the playroom. Heavy music pumps out through a speaker system near the rear of the room. On our left as we first enter, there's a woman dressed in revealing leather gear who is strapped to a St. Andrew's cross for an impact scene. Her partner is flogging her. Farther down along that side of the room, there's a man using a feather to tickle a nude woman lying face down on a bench.
Things get a little heavier when he starts to use his hand.
Another scene involves a woman leading a man around the room. He's on all fours and has a leash affixed to his scrotum. On the opposite side, there's a similar scene with a nude woman and a man dressed as though he's just gotten off work from an office job.
Later on, we find Riot in the middle of an impact scene with Focus, his master. Riot cries out in pleasure every time the paddle strikes.
Naomi has been suspended in the air by ropes, tied by a demonstrator well-versed in the art of safe rope play. Eventually, the demonstrator places candles on Naomi's nude body and lights them, the hot wax dripping onto her as an onlooker brings over fire blankets and an extinguisher in case anything goes wrong. We bring chairs in, and at one point, Kelly's told to move away from the scene because he's gotten too close, but he doesn't get hit.
Gav didn't end up scening that night. Riot was in subspace from his own scene. That was the first time we'd seen someone in subspace. The psychological state of the submissive during sadomasochistic activity. It was a little like watching someone be drunk, or maybe sedated. He was peaceful and serene. So, understandably, he didn't feel like spanking Gavin on the ass.
Maybe I love you, maybe I don't. Yep.
People are all about exploring themselves right now, whether it's their identity, whether it's their kink. There'll always be a vortex that'll come and go. All I do is host a party. There's never going to be an end to kink.
Let's revisit the Iowa legal case from 1985 about the pimp Tree Collier and the woman whom he brutalized, or according to him, who asked him to engage in a consensual BDSM fantasy. Collier lost that case, and the court specifically rejected his argument that the alleged assaults fell under an exception in state law about, quote, voluntary participants in a sport, social, or other activity. In fact, before Collier unsuccessfully appealed his conviction, the judge in the initial case instructed the jury to ignore the issue of consent entirely. Now, the Collier case has gone on to become one of a small handful of cases involving BDSM and the question of consent, which has been repeatedly cited in subsequent legal decisions. In 1999, for example, it was cited in a headline-grabbing case in New York involving a graduate student named Oliver Jovanovic, who was found guilty of sodomizing and torturing an undergrad over a period of 20 hours. The court cited 3 earlier cases, including the Collier case, to emphasize that there was established precedent across the country that consent was not a valid defense to assault charges stemming from alleged BDSM practices. Jovanovic's conviction was eventually overturned on a successful appeal that involved email messages that were excluded as evidence at trial. A 2004 appellate court in Nebraska also cited the Collier decision's rejection of the defense that BDSM fell under the state's exception for assault involving voluntary participants in a sport, social, or other activity. That case, State v. Van, concerned 2 men in a sadomasochistic relationship with a master-slave dynamic.
Truth
The slave in the relationship found his new master after looking for someone online who could provide, quote, the treatment that I thought that I deserved for fundamentally being a bad person. The two exchanged hundreds of emails in which the slave laid out in explicit detail how he wanted his master to restrain, humiliate, and torture him in various ways and not allow him to escape. Eventually, the slave staged his own kidnapping and was taken by his master to a basement. The master would not allow him to escape as he tortured him over the course of several days and informed him that he would eventually kill him. The experience soon became too intense for the slave, and he managed to flee. The master was convicted on charges of sexual assault, false imprisonment, and terroristic threats. This conviction was upheld on appeal. One of the better-known names in Iowa kink might be Cuffs, which until recently was an officially recognized student organization at Iowa State University. It was founded in the early 2000s for students interested in bondage, domination, sadism, and masochism. One reason you may have heard of this is because the Collier case was also cited by university administrators in 2004 when they tried to crack down on Cuffs. They did this by ruling that the club's president, Dwayne Long, had violated the student code of conduct by committing assault when he flogged a clothed volunteer during an on-campus demonstration of various BDSM techniques. So because of legal decisions like the ones I've just described, along with a lack of subsequent legislation recognizing consent, practicing BDSM is still technically illegal in several states, including Iowa. But that's not the end of the story either. There have been recent efforts to acknowledge that consenting adults can practice BDSM. Just one example is the University of Iowa's policies on sexual harassment and misconduct were officially updated on August 13th, 2021, with the following language. Quote, when parties consent to BDSM or other forms of kink, non-consent may be shown by the use of a safe word. Resistance, force, violence, or even saying no may be part of the kink and thus consensual. So the University of Iowa's evaluation of communication in kink situations should be guided by reasonableness rather than strict adherence to policy that assumes non-kink relationships as a default.
We caught up with a few people at the Airbnb afterwards. Riot, Naomi, Tag, and Focus, Riot's master.
We're recording you, whores.
But like,
Fuck you then.
I love you.
Everybody was so loud.
Bro, there's so much noise and overstimulation in that place.
I like
What
it.
I don't particularly like Vortex is because of the overstimulation. Like, it distracts me, it
I'm
distracts her.
understimulated at crop. That's why I get tired if I'm not scening.
is that a suitcase? Was that you with the suitcase we saw?
I mean, it's the red bag.
I think we saw you walking in.
It's definitely helpful.
Yeah.
You guys went to the Elms, but was this like the first party with a lot of people that you guys were at?
I mean, yeah, they almost had 40, 50 people probably at one point.
So in general, what's your guys' impression of the community so far?
For me, it's just a lot more complex. I knew it would be to some extent.
It's pretty inviting too. I didn't know if people would be really standoffish, and I kind of expected that. Yeah, I understand people would expect that we would just butcher, the context of Morgan, and of course not try to do that.
People always feel that the community is way more welcoming than what they were expected, so it's super gratifying that you guys said that too.
One thing we wanted to ask the two of you was if you could tell us about the dynamic between.
So I'm a sadist, I like pain, but I also like control. And so the way things evolved with him is I didn't have anybody that I could exercise really any control over. He has BPD, he's got trouble controlling his emotions. And so a lot of that dynamic got built around a way to make things easier relative to that.
So you say you're a sadist, but you're doing this to help him too. Is that contradictory, or do you not see that as?
So I don't see it as contradictory per se, but you're right, that part doesn't seem like it fits necessarily, but That's my more default nature. Like, I just want to be kind and help people. Even the sadist thing, like, the kindness is part and parcel with it, because if I hit somebody and it's a bad hit, I can see the reaction.
There's two types of suffering. You're suffering wholeheartedly, then there's suffering like peacefully.
Like, can I hit you in a bad way?
Where?
Shoulder blade with like knuckle.
Is it gonna like hurt me?
It won't hurt you. So like, here.
In a way that I just don't like?
Yeah. So like, if you look at his reaction if I hit him in a fine place versus two totally different reactions. Okay. Yeah, it'll bruise. You'll like it later.
Oh God. But yeah, oh, it's the Pomeranian.
Have you guys gotten like the aftercare stuff in terms of taking care of the person afterward? I know, like, okay, I'm okay, they're okay, like, I did an okay thing. That satisfies my, like, instinct of the whole kindness thing. Like, I've had people where they're like, I'm not an aftercare person, it does not go well with me. And, like, I actually have to take care of myself in that way.
When you're calling somebody, like, a cunt or a whore or whatever in a scene, and, like, you many times have, like, a significant relationship with that person outside. So for me, when I get called names like that, my aftercare has to be a lot of affirmation. Like, I'm not what you said I was in the scene, that's not what you actually think about me. So it's they're getting out of their headspace of calling me that, and I'm getting out of that headspace of thinking that's what I am. Like, when I do something like orgasm torture or orgasm denial, like, my head goes into a completely different space than, like...
It feels like someone blended my brain, and I literally only in here to receive cock.
Sorry, I'm naked.
I hit you.
Yeah.
Can I go here? Okay. I'm doing it for the sound, so it's going to sting like fuck. Ready?
She likes singing. I'm not singing. I would have screamed. She giggles. I hate it.
Do one of you guys want to feel it? Like with that or like with my wiffle ball
Go
bat?
get your wiffle ball back. What was it like for you seeing, like, me in subspace for the first time?
It was definitely a little odd. Like, I had heard about it, but I had never really known what to make of it because my only association with the word subspace was Star Trek and whatnot.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you're fucking nerd.
Yes. So I didn't understand what subspace was, and even seeing it on her for the first time was a little jarring because I could definitely tell that there was something different. And then, like, I laid her down for some aftercare. She's laying on my lap, and then all of a sudden we make eye contact, and then there was a moment when she was making eye contact with me and it was completely different. And it was like, okay, there she is.
You got a sense of it?
I don't know, maybe.
It's not bare skin, so like...
Can I hit your hair?
Yeah.
Then it starts to like sting a little, yeah?
Not really.
Hey, yeah! Damn, even the one who's not into kink brats at you.
Okay, this is a bare skin thing, I'm sure. It's like...
So, like, you feel that sting?
Yeah, that's good.
So that's stingy, whereas the other thing was kind of thuddy.
Yeah.
And, like, I can make the butt sting, too.
Alright, that seems bad.
So, like, if you want to feel, like, more...
Yeah, sure, I'll try that.
So, like...
For research purposes. Hey, Kelly, you want it?
What?
You want it?
You want to feel?
You know, Kelly.
For research purposes.
Yeah,
There's a fan of, like, actually in whip scenes, oftentimes people that are really good at aim will whip right next to somebody's ear. The sound of it alone can just, like...
Alright.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Was the jump, like, nervousness, or was the jump pain?
Oh, no, it wasn't pain. Yeah, and one more.
Oh, that was a hard one. What?
You got denim pants on.
Okay.
You got denim pants on.
So here's like, all right.
Ooh, yeah. One more. Woo!
Well, thanks for joining us around the fire tonight. Next episode, we'll be sitting around a campfire at the Elms. It's going to be a little more off-kilter.
You can say Iowa unfiltered.
Yeah. If this episode blew your skirt up, then you ought to enjoy it.
But we should probably warn you, it will be a little more vulgar.
But it should be even more fun. We listened to your feedback and we finally created our MySpace page. You can find us at myspace.com/Iowa Off-Kilter.
So if you haven't already, add us to your top 8 alongside Slipknot and
Jinko jeans.
Jinko jeans, yes. I heard Tom still wears those to this day. We don't mean to flog a dead pony here, but if you enjoyed this episode, check us out on social media or on our website at iowaoffkilter.com, and we'll see you at the Elms.
Signing off, I'm Kelly Michael Bevins.
And I'm Gavin Aronson.
And thanks for coming round. I know you're trying to think of puns still, aren't you? Because I am.
Like, do we not want that?
No, I do. I just can't think of any. This is a phrase. If this episode was a chunk up your deuce. If this episode was just what the sexy nurse ordered. Fuck.
If this episode put your scrotum in a bird cage.
If this episode was your cup of pee.
Yes, great. Oh, man. That's the best one.
You might like the next one.